I'll tell you what, our next guest, when he put a face mask on, when he played at Auburn, this dude was an absolute problem up front. One of our favorite guys to have on. You can catch him. SEC Network does a great job, the USFL, the Cube Show pod. He's on with McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Again, he's everywhere. Cole Cubelic, former Auburn great. Cole, man, thanks so much for hopping on with us today.
Absolutely. What's going on, fellas?
Man, just a day closer. I think we're under 100 days toward till
we're like 94 days.
Yeah, good. I'm just trying to just wake up, just sleep for longer, wake up, get closer.
Well, pretty soon they're going to play football games in June.
Definitely without a doubt. Cole, I want to start off. Obviously, everybody's been talking about this Rashada situation. Me and you were texting back and forth in it, and we got into the nitty-gritty and the details of that the other day. My question for you is something that's a little bit more macro, a little bit more 30,000-foot view. When we get this inevitable split with the Power Five, with the NCAA being gone, which is where we're heading, do you think whatever commissions put together, whatever panel or governing body that they decide to put in charge, which we probably know a couple guys that'll be on it, that the NIL rules will be somewhat more buttoned up, the transfer portal rules will be somewhat more buttoned up, and when you sign that NLI to go play at a Georgia or a Florida State or somewhere like that, you are signing in to following those rules regardless of what you want to do in any court outside of it once you sign that. Do you think we're headed there?
Yeah, Jake, I think we'll have something a little bit more along those lines, but what have we done for the last 100 years of college football? We have found ways to snake the rules.
Yeah.
Let's look at what collectives became. Nobody knew what that was 3 years ago. All of a sudden, Texas A&M's way ahead of the curve. If you really dive into it, it was almost by accident, the way that they had their athletic department set up and their fundraising arm set up, but it worked brilliantly. Now everybody has a collective. Some schools have 2 or 3 collectives. Whether it's been bagmen, collectives, guaranteed NIL deals, whether it becomes something where corporations are guaranteeing you stock shares or employment after school, there's going to be ways to snake certain things to where you have an advantage of coming to play here as opposed to going and playing there. So I think things like the transfer portal are going to be much more controllable by a university or a conference or whatever new league is set up through college football. But as far as anything financial goes, you may try to put some guardrails on it and try to put rules around it, but that's only going to lead to more people figuring out different ways to be able to utilize it in manners that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that can be a good thing, right? Like there's been good things that have happened in college football because people have been able to kind of skirt the rules. There's been precedent set that leads to new rules, which is what I'm hoping happens in this case. But Cole,
nobody has gotten better at snaking the rules than the player.
Oh, without a doubt.
Let's go back to graduate transfer. None of us knew that was a real thing 8 or 9 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to transfer and play next year. You can't do that. Oh, I got my degree. Yes, I can. Whoops. Now everybody's going to do it. You look at this red shirt rule that came up. Oh, it's so great. We're going to let kids play for 4 games and not have to burn their red shirt. Well, what happens at week 4 and 5 when I'm going to all these coaches sitting in TV meetings? They're saying, we got a couple kids that don't want to play football anymore. What are you talking about? They don't want to play football. Well, they told us they'll go scout team and they'll practice with us, but just don't put us in a game if you don't mind, because they had played in 4 games and they wanted to save that red shirt. Like these kids are way beyond where we were 10, 15, 20 years ago as far as understanding how to snake the rules and find advantages around what rules have been opened up and what doors have been opened up. Well,
and now, Cole, the perception is if you do anything that is not even against the player, but trying to balance any sort of the equation, they won't even move now because you're looked at like the Soviet Union. You're looked at like you don't want the player to be able to do anything. You want to take away the player's freedom. I find it fascinating as we continue to go down this road. But something else that I find fascinating, Cole, is looking into 2024, right? There's going to be teams that obviously regress and progress. And when I look at Auburn, obviously a school that me and you care a lot about, that we hope they do well. Last year, Hugh Freeze coming in first year, they battled. The loss to New Mexico State was bad, but I can make the argument that nobody flipped their roster better than what Hugh Freeze did in the offseason outside of one spot that he's talked about. When you look at the way that Auburn is built, what is your trust level right now in Peyton Thorne being able to get Auburn to that 8-win mark?
Some of it is dependent on what's going to be around him, and I have more trust in what's going to be around him. You bring in a star wide receiver in Cam Coleman that looks like a guy that's going to be a matchup problem, a bit of an eraser. and then you bring in a slot receiver from Georgia State that I think can be a big-time catch-and-run guy that's going to be able to help you down the field, Rivaldo Fairweather back at tight end. What he has there are options in which he does not have to be perfect for Auburn's offense to be successful. They didn't have that last year. They didn't have guys that could separate. They didn't have guys that made a lot of difficult catches. They didn't have guys plain and simple that helped the quarterback a whole lot. Yep. I think they've upgraded the depth up front on the offensive line. I think you have a second-year center that's going to be one of the better centers in this league in the next couple of years. You have a Jeremiah Wright at guard. Last year kind of couldn't get going. I think you're going to see him assert himself this year. He'll be a real physical presence. And then I think you have a loaded running back room that's going to be able to help that offense as well. And Peyton Thorne has just enough of his legs to force the defense to defend you in a different way. If the offensive line takes a step, which I think that it can, the receiver room is going to be totally different. Oh, and by the way, you go get a guy that checks off just about every box in a B-plus manner or A-minus manner in a wide receiver from Penn State that's going to be able to help you as well. So they upgraded that room, and that was the room that needed to be upgraded. I actually have a lot more confidence in the offense, whether it's Peyton Thorne or not. My concern's on the other side of the football. I don't know if Auburn has enough bulk up front defensively to be able to stand up to a lot of the teams they're going to play this year. Now, I give Hugh Freeze credit. He went out and decided not to spend $1 million, $1.2 million on a new quarterback for a year, and went out and got extra depth along the defensive line, got another pass rusher from Arkansas State, essentially said, if we're playing the salary cap game, let's take that 1.2 and go get 2 D tackles that can give us 10, 12 reps a game, a pass rusher that can give us 10, 15 reps a game, and they're going to help us in weeks 10, 11, 12, where we didn't have the depth to be able to do that last season. So I like the way they managed the roster in the offseason. They just didn't get a lot of splash players that certain people nationally are going to look at and say, oh, that gives them an extra 2 wins. But Peyton Thorne, with real help around him, can be a successful quarterback in the SEC.
Man, I hope you're right, Cole. Rivaldo Fairweather, if you don't know that name, you are going to learn more of it this year. This is an NFL player, big-bodied guy. I think there's some NFL offenses that could take him right now.
Cole, something I found really interesting with this Jaden Rashada situation, and we have the contract here. There's a legitimate contract that we were all able to read that guarantees this kid a lot of money. You know, Billy Napier's name is not on this contract, nor is the Booster Club member who is named in the lawsuit. There's a guy named Edward Rojas, and it's the Gator Collective LLC here. But this person's not named in the lawsuit that Jaden Rashada is saying with the $13.85 million or something guaranteed. You know, when we talk about the schedule that's coming up for Florida, and as if this situation couldn't get any weirder, it's now a backup quarterback at Georgia, who's opened up suing the head coach at the University of Florida. As we sit here now, knowing what Billy's already done and knowing the schedule that's coming up for Florida, will Billy Napier be the head coach at the end of this 2024 season?
I think he will. I think this lawsuit is a little bit he said, she said, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know all the details, all the ins and outs of it. But just
no, you got it right, Cole. It's he said, she said. That's exactly right. You nailed it.
And so just because somebody goes out and I say that you tried to say you were going to give me this for that and it never happened doesn't necessarily mean that litigation is going to be something that ends up in your favor. The schedule is difficult, but I think we are dismissing the level of talent that Florida does have. I think the offensive line can be a step better. I think Montrell Johnson is a super solid college football tailback that nobody talks about. I think you added a freshman in Ball that's going to be a stud running back that you saw in the spring game. When I watched him in the spring game, the way he moved, I was like, man, this kid might be able to help. I talked to some people on that side of that facility. They told me he's 236 pounds. And I was sitting there thinking, hell, there's no way that kid was moving like that. I think that you have a couple. This kid that they just got from Arizona State is going to help. Badger, the wide receiver that they got there, he's a big physical kid that's not afraid to work the middle of the field. He can give you 50-50 ball catches down the field. So your receiver core gets a little bit of a bump there. I think you have a strong tight end room. And you have a quarterback that if you took Graham Mertz's numbers and you put them on Peyton Thorne, or if you put them on, let's just say Lenore Sellers was going to be a second-year quarterback at South Carolina, or if Blake Shapen was going into year 2 at Mississippi State, and those are the same numbers, we'd be talking about those kids and their chances to win 10 games. Yeah. But Graham Mertz puts up those numbers, and we're just sitting here talking about, can they win 4? The 3-4 win thing for Florida is egregious, in my opinion. And I think a lot of that comes with the logos that's on that schedule that you just mentioned. I think UCF's done a great job in the offseason, by the way. Gus Malzahn's done a ton of work going to get guys like KJ Jefferson and bring in talent, but Florida should win that game. Miami has a chance to be pretty good, but let's not pretend like this is 2001 Miami. Okay, Texas A&M's got a new head football coach, a major depletion in talent from a year ago. I think Texas is got to take a little bit of a step back based on what they had a season ago. Now, I think Texas can be a national championship contender, but they're not going to be what they were last year.
Agreed.
You look what LSU lost on offense. We just think that they're going to be the same football team. By the way, they had guys drafted into the NFL off that defense. And we just think the defense all of a sudden found some magic serum that Blake Baker is going to pour into their helmets, and they're just going to be a top 20 defense. It's not going to happen that way. Florida State has a complete overhaul on their roster. So I think people see what some of those teams have done the last 3 to 5 years, and they just say, oh, there's no way Florida can win that football game. Florida's got some issues. There are some concerns, but I don't look at can Florida get to 4 or 5 wins. I think it's a team that'll be over 500 because the games on that schedule, especially when you compare it to last year, it's not totally different with some of the teams that have been interchanged and where you play some of those games.
I agree with a lot of that. As we sit here right now, the projected win total for Florida is 4.5.
I would
I'm sorry, it just that, and it was 3.5 a year ago, right? And I think I had him at 4 wins when I was filling it out. It didn't sit right.
Dude, we're still talking about Florida.
4.5 wins. I think I'm taking the over with Cole.
I agree with that, and I'll tell you this: I think Graham Mertz, in my opinion, I don't get shocked a lot in college football anymore. His performance last year, I was shocked by how well he played after watching him at Wisconsin and seeing the way that translated.
And early, too. Some of the balls he threw against Utah, I'm like, this is it.
No, like he just looked different than what I remember seeing at Wisconsin. Blaine, what's Booster Club saying?
All right, Cole, we're going to go to Drink It Up. I believe there's a Missouri fan here. He said, Cole, I love your stuff. Give me the honest truth. Is Missouri's roster good enough to compete with the best in the SEC?
That's funny. We had this debate on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning today, and McElroy and I had a pretty heated discussion going back and forth because we picked the teams that we thought can win a national championship. Not will, not predicting them to, but can. Yeah. And I had Missouri as a can win the national championship. Greg did not. I understand Blake Baker's gone, but you look at what that offensive line brings back. I think Armand Mimbu might be the best right tackle returning in the SEC. Connor Tollison's going to be back at center. You went and got Caden Green to replace Javon Foster at left tackle. You just mentioned Fairweather is a name that people need to know at tight end, Jake. I'm going to tell you right now, Brett Norfleet is a name that people need to know at tight end. He is an absolute mauler inside that Missouri offense. I think the running back room might be better collectively this year with Marcus Carroll, who has tree trunks for quads and ran for over 1,300 yards at Georgia State last year, and Nate Noel, who's been running the stretch play for App State for about 14 years, is going to step in and kind of be the alternate back in that offense. A quarterback that took a massive step last year. If he takes a third of that step going into this year, Missouri's offense with a brilliant offensive coordinator, who, by the way, is back and gets no credit, is going to be fantastic. Theo East on the outside, Mookie Cooper in the slot, and do whatever the hell you want with Luther Burton.
Yeah, just get him the game.
It's going to be tough to stop. And I think Blake Baker is excellent, but Johnny Walker's back up front. Christian Williams had a good year last year. He's back up front. You go get Chris McClellan from Florida on that defensive line as well. They might not have a Darius Robinson, but they have enough, and they're in as good a shape from a depth perspective on that defensive line than maybe any other team in the SEC. Missouri can not only contend for the SEC, Missouri will be in the playoffs, and I think has an outside chance to contend for a national championship if everything's going their way.
Well, they just picked up a big linebacker commit from South Alabama transfer as well to add even more depth to that front seven. We had Coach Jacob Peeler, the wide receiver coach, on a couple weeks ago, and I mean that guy's got to be feeling like he's walking around with the launch codes with what they got at wide receiver, including Luther Burden. Cole, one more before we get you out of here. Love watching you on the USFL. I've actually started to really enjoy watching. I love football in general. I'd go to Serbia to watch it if I had to. But with the new rules, if there was one rule that the USFL has that we don't have in college football or the NFL, which one would you add? Which one do you kind of like the most? To me, I like hearing the referees talk to the coaches. I need to know that.
Man, the transparency is incredible. When you get Dean Blandino and you're able to listen and watch him go through his process on a play, deciding what the penalty is going to be or not be, awesome. That is incredible. But I'll go to the mega challenge. And that is having the capabilities to challenge anything at any time, whether it was a penalty or you want to challenge that there was not a penalty on a certain play. You get one per game. That has been a total game changer for us. And there have been some that in desperation that have thrown it and missed it. And there have been some that hit it and actually saved the game for them. So Now, if this were the XFL last year, I would have told you that kickoff that the NFL is actually going to adopt. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's something that should happen at every level of football. But something in the UFL right now that's happening, it would be that mega challenge. I know Belichick pushed for it for a long time, actually, in the NFL, that you should be able to have one challenge for anything at any time. And it has made a lot of the viewing a little bit more polarizing because it doesn't have to be a penalty for someone to challenge it. It could be any play at any time, and somebody looks at it and says, we think holding on 78, we want to challenge that. Or we want to challenge that the receiver didn't have possession of the football. You throw that flag, and they're going to go take a look at it. That, to me, has been the coolest part of this league this year.
Well, I'll never get upset about getting a call right. I'll never get upset about it by throwing the mega challenge. But it's always a right call when we get you on here, Cole. Appreciate you taking some time. I know you're a busy man. Tell everybody quickly where they can find your stuff. If you don't watch, Cole, if you don't watch the Cube Show pod, I'm telling you, you guys are missing out. You watch our show, you like our show, you're going to love this. Tell them, Cole.
I appreciate that. Cube Show on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, go search that. All your socials as well. At Cole Cubelic's where I am. You can get that. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, jocksfm.com, weekdays, 7 to 10 a.m.
Cole, thanks so much, buddy. See you soon.
Enjoyed it, guys. Thank you.
Hey, Cole Cubelic, one of the best in the business. Love having Cole on. YouTube, what's up? I know y'all loving the new time. We are too. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Keep sharing the show. Y'all know what's about to go down when football season comes here, too. Y'all know what's up.